Welcome to another Instagram Live from the Lightbridge. My name is Jacob Ballinger. I'm a former Gaffer and the founder of the Lightbridge. And we meet up here once a month to discuss new approaches, new thoughts about lighting, and how we can do it. So everybody, thanks for joining. It's really excited to do this today because we've been wrecking our brains on new approaches to lighting. And today is going to be the first time I'm actually talking about it in public. So I'm really happy to share this with you today for a first introduction to what we're doing with the Lightbridge. So let's jump back in, right? So when we're talking about techniques of lighting, what's the first thing that comes to mind, right? That's we talk about three-point lighting. That's what we know, right? So what is that basically? Look at my cool contraption here. So basically that means we can go from a backlight and we can take this light all the way to a front light into the face, right? Then we can start painting around with this. So basically, this gives us a feeling of a three-dimensional room. We start with a face, we have a back, a front. Where's the camera into the position of the person in comparison to where the light is? So we start to light from there. And we take this approach from three-point lighting. Where's my backlight? Where's my key? Where's my fill light? And we put it into rooms, right? And we say, okay, here's the window, I'm lighting in here. We need more fill light, and I'm gonna set up a fill light inside. We need a kicker. Okay, we're gonna put a light from the background. But we all know the issues with this, right? We're adding a lot of gear into our creative space. So the space where the camera could be, where actors and actresses could move, we're setting up gear in there, and we're limiting our creativity, our freedom for speed, and for all the things that come with it at that point, right? So that's the point when Lightbridge started. So we started to rethink about how can we get away from fill light? How can we get away from all the lights within a room to do what we do? And, as I've been talking about the last couple of years, we talked about, well, let's light into a room and make it look as much as sunlight. Because as we know, when we have sunlight, we don't need any fill light. Why is that? Because we're not saying we have to set up a fill light. We're saying if you let the light flow, and you learn how to use the walls, the floors, the ceilings to light, suddenly you free up your space. It looks really natural. You have a nice, beautiful contrast, and you can light from this. So it takes this level, like, for example, the reflector out there is just like 5 feet away from the window, and it looks like it's really far away. That's because you're using the reflector to extend the light, to get it into the room. And what's more important about this for our subject today is actually that this light bounces back from the wall or from the floor and gives you light in the room. And everything starts to light from there. So that's the way we did it until now, and that's what we've been talking about. But of course, we have to evolve, and we have to push, and we need to innovate. So I want to talk about something else today. I want to talk about layered lighting, and that's what we're calling it. So that gives you the complexity that we have from lights that comes into a room and looks natural, but we can even reduce what we need to do to still get gorgeous looking light, even, to reduce it from everything we've done until now. So, but before I can go into this, I think we quickly have to jump back to something very basic before we talk about this. Sorry, I'm always just stopping to answer questions. There's a specific rental house if we want to partner as a rental house. I know you guys have a program for that. Sorry, this is off topic. No worries. That's the great thing about live. We're here to chat. If you go to our website, www.thelightbridge.com, we have a special program for rentals because it's all about support for us, right? So we produce professional gear, so it's all about the support system that we can give into this. And there you can go to the rental support. You can get, after you purchase your gears, a better way to replace them at a more competitive price point, all that jazz. Okay, getting back to the topic about saying, if you talk about different techniques of lighting, we always have to go back to the thing is, well, what do we actually like about light? What is something that makes light interesting? And we've defined it as calling it the 3 C's. There are 3 C's that actually are important when it comes to quality of light. And one thing, the first C is contrast. So the most interesting thing when we talk about light is always contrast. If it's flat in the face, it might take a dark background to create contrast. If I go ahead and I say I do backlight, I'm creating contrast here, right? So my face is not so visible. So that's already interesting. What's happening there? The light's coming from the back. We're very accustomed to lighting from the side, right? Just you have to push this away so we take away the bounce. There we go. So you all of a sudden have light from one direction, and it creates interesting contrast. And the more we move to the front, the more we have to take care of, do we cut the light from the top? In our case, we just have to move the reflector down, or we just pan it off and create interesting stuff, if that's what we're trying to do. So a major thing in quality of light is always contrast. And the reason for contrast, just to go a few minutes into this, is there's something really interesting there. Because what happens in our brain is we see one thing, we see a second thing, and our brain combines it, and we make our own story. So one of the most famous examples I know at least is from Alfred Hitchcock, from the director, and he tells the story of saying, you have a shot, table, two people sitting and eating. Shot goes 10 minutes. Absolutely boring, right? But if before you do that shot, you have a camera down on the floor, looking underneath the floor, and you see a bomb that's ticking, and then you go back into that wide shot and you show it for 10 minutes, all of a sudden it's super interesting. Is this bomb going to go off? What's going to happen? So our brain starts to work. And when we take that into lighting, we have the same thing. As soon as we create contrast, we give space for our mind to think what's going on there. What's in the dark background? What's in the dark side of the face? So we automatically start to think about that in that kind of a way. And there's a term for this that's called connotation. So connotation means we see one thing, we see a second thing, and the brain combines it. The Russian, famous film director did that. He just shot a face, always looked the same way, and then he edited in a baby, a grave, some food, and when you saw it, you think, oh my God, that person is so taking care of this child. That person is so sad seeing a grave. The person is so hungry seeing some food. So it's always the same face. So it's the same thing applies for lighting. If we can create contrast, we can create things that are happening in the mind. And the strongest things that are happening in the mind, we know that from horror movies, is always if we don't see it. Because our mind always is going to make up, personalized for our own personal taste, the most horrible thing we can think of, right? So same thing when we think about lighting. We always want to get depth, light from the side, light from underneath. We always want to create something that creates attention. And it's also for our eyes, Something changes, we look there. That's where animals, right? So that's basically what happens there in that way. The other second C, so we have contrast, number one. Second thing is complexity. So we get bored if I would sit here, if it wouldn't be, I hope you're not getting bored watching me, but it's more not about obviously my face or anything, it's about what I'm talking about, but in general having this light from the front, if this is too long the same way, it's going to stay boring, right? But if I do this from time to time, it's always going to be interesting. Ooh, look what's happening, the light's panning around, something's interesting even if I'm talking. It may be distracting to what I'm saying at this point, but it's contrast, so we just kind of react upon that. And that's where complexity comes in. If we don't want this contrast happening all the time, we want a certain amount of complexity, like a person moving through a room. We want to go through different shades of light. That's where rhythm of light comes into play too. Do you walk to the window? Do you walk away? Are you walking around in a room? And that stuff all of a sudden creates a certain amount of complexity. I have a kicker from the back. I got something soft from the front. All of a sudden, there's a rhythm, there's a beat starting. So that adds into what we talk about contrast. We go into the complexity of the lighting. That can also be color. Contrast can also be very flat, but two different colors can do the same thing. And the third thing is, that's really interesting, is continuity. Because what happens in the world that we work in, you don't see this full room. You're getting used to it because you have a window in the background and I'll put some light through it. So it might be, maybe there's daylight outside or there's some light outside, but we get used to the room. So when we think about how we're editing scenes together, how we're shooting them, are we doing a master first? Are we going to move into a close-up? And for example, we established a window in a master, and then we move into the close-up. The person was sitting in front of the window, and suddenly that person's in the shade. It's going to be irritating because you think there was just a window there. I was going to a close-up. I was feeling comfortable. I was feeling safe watching this because I now understand the room. So we have to take care of these things. So having continuity, our third C, is really important within a scene to let people, we take audience by the hand. So we have to give them the feeling we understand how the room looks, and then we can start to evolve the story. Of course, if we break this, it's art, there's no rules, then something different happens. We get irritated. We have like, oh, what's happening here? So when we talk about, different moods we want to create, sometimes breaking that continuity is something really important. So just to sum it up again, 3 C's, we got contrast, we got complexity, and we got continuity. Those are the 3 things that really make up the quality of the light that we're talking about. Okay, so we now have that all established. And when we now go on, we want to talk about a new way of lighting. So we said we would be talking about, I'll take this here in the background now. So we're talking about basically a room. So we were saying there's a room here and there's light coming in. Okay, so we're standing here in the front, there's a window here. And now we're saying, okay, we have light coming into the room. This means the light's coming in here. It's bouncing off the floor, it's going onto the walls, it's going off of this wall, and this way we're creating our fill light and our contrast and our continuity, all at the same things that are happening here. So this is where we get complexity, right? Because like if you have a person standing here right now, here in the center, oops. So we have a person standing here that's going to be walking around. Sorry, my drawing skills are limited. So we say we want to have contrast. Maybe a certain thing we want to do is we say, well, we like the light coming in from the window. That's going to be our key light, but let's do a top light from the top, just so when the person moves, it has a feeling, the hair come out nicely, because we're going to keep the background a little bit darker, and then we're going to add some fill maybe from this side. Let's just maybe take a white bounce or something. So we can create our 3 C's doing this. So there's one limitation here, right? As soon as this person moves around, we do different shots, stuff can come into the play. Stuff may have to move at a certain point. Again, that's really important when you're thinking about relighting, what's happening with continuity to the scene. So what I want to talk about here today, and that's what we're really excited about, is we talk about layered lighting. What does that mean? Layered light means that, you're seeing it upside down, right? Doesn't matter. So what that means is we have our room again. And now we say we want to have a certain amount of complexity in the room because we have a person standing here. So we say, let's light from this direction. And let's say we use a big white bounce to do this. Let's use something white from this direction. And now, usually when we talk about, we want some more contrast in here, we need more complexity going on, we'd start to add stuff in. But there is a different way to do this. And this is to say, we have our white bounce here, but now we're adding something in the middle. We're actually adding a harder punch, a different color from the same direction. And you know what this all of a sudden does? This suddenly gives us the chance to say people can move around. They can move closer, they can move further away. You can shoot all angles because your gear is all on one side. And we're creating our contrast. We're creating, I have to do the other way around, right? If it's around, no, it's right for you. We have our contrast. We have our complexity. Contrast, it's one direction. Complexity, we're doing hard, soft, different colors from one direction. And we're keeping our continuity because no matter where we now shoot in the room, the light's always going to come from the same direction. And that's the big difference to way we were lighting a lot of times now. We said, well, we're setting up our lights from one direction, and that's that. Or we say, yeah, we have a softbox from one direction, and that's that. Or we say, well, now we're missing something because it's boring, right? We're already so, bored of light grids, for example. We don't know what that looks like. So we say, let's add kickers. Let's start putting stuff into the room. But I'd really advise you or suggest that you try this. And it's a really classical way. Also, what you can do is, if you think about a face from the top, here's the nose, here's the eyes. So now all of a sudden we say, okay, we're adding our soft layer. And now we're adding into this soft layer, we're adding a different color, a different punch. And all of a sudden now we have a complexity coming from the same direction. May this be a window or something like that too. And the complexity of the light doesn't even only have to come here from one punch. You could add a little kicker if you want that still from this direction because the wall's dark, but you're all pushing it from one direction. And what you'll see is that this complexity makes your life easier. Still have the quality of the light and you still have the continuity. So those things all kind of come into play to make that work. And this little teaser talking about different way of thinking about light, because obviously that's what Lightbridge is all about. That's the way we came up with the natural way to see light. And that's the way we're taking it now to the next level, saying can be natural if you want to, but it doesn't have to be. It's about complexity, it's about contrast, it's about continuity. How can we take this now to next product launch? And we're going to be doing this product launch in the coming week. And I will be talking a lot about this layered lighting, but you're the first to hear it now, to see where the technique comes from. And it's going to be really interesting hearing your feedback, what you think about this technique, when you try it, when you test it, and see how that comes into play and works for you. And I'm quite positive that this technique will help you get away sometimes from three-point lighting with all the limitations, like if a kicker, a person works out of that kicker, it's gone, or it's in shot. So all this stuff coming from one direction of the room really can help you achieve all that you need, give you a great looking light, but at the same time make life for you easier to maintain the level of quality that your clients and your DPs or your directors or your producers are wanting from you, and to push that envelope, because I think that's really what it's all about. What we do at the Lightbridge is, or what was always about for me as a gaffer too, was how can we push the level? How can we push the level to the next lighting? So that's my small little pitch for today. And I was thinking we'd leave a lot of space if questions come up or stuff is there that you want to talk about, we can do that now as well. And just to show off this beautiful thing we built today, again, putting a light on a dolly, which I love doing. And it feels like being on a boat, because now just myself alone in the studio at night, I can play around, giving you different qualities of light just off one thing. I see the bounce over here, that's the white that's coming from the other side. So it creates these beautiful little things that are going on. So that's so much from a little layered speech today, layered lighting speech. How you guys doing out there? What can Lightbridge, what can I offer here in this 1 hour in terms of lighting? What are you doing right now is something we should talk about, something we can share. Anything out there on your end that comes up? And if not, that's also okay. Then we had a really short little Instagram live today, and we can go from there. I got just drop down, see if any questions were put in while I was talking all along. No questions today. Can you join video? I've never done that, to be honest. So I'm not really sure how that would go, but you're glad to write the questions in. I recently shot a short using this technique without knowing what it was called. I violated watching. Very good. Of course, everything we do has been there. Like, reflectors have been there since the Greeks. So, it's always about, that's what I really learned starting this company is you think you have this big invention and it changes everything. You're always turning small knobs. So if that already worked for you, that's fantastic. So I'm going to be really excited to see what you think about our new product that's coming out. Can you show me more on examples of a complexity of lighting? I'm limited today. I'm alone here in the studio today. But when it comes to complexity of lighting, there's different ways we can do that. One is, let's say rooms, people moving. So you can always work with people walking through rooms, not to always have them in the same light, but let them go out of light and come into light. And you can do the same thing with colors. Sometimes I even put 2 gels on one lamp, just to mix it up, to get differences, to get complexity. Like daylight, you've got skylight and you've got warm light, right? Or different qualities of night light that work great together, and different kinds of colors. And so that's one way to do it. And the other thing that's about tempo a lot too. It's going to be an interview coming out with some great colleagues, and they talk a lot about what complexity lighting is. It doesn't have to be beautiful all the time, but it's about when people fall into the spot where you want them to end up in, and they go through different levels of lighting. So the differences, like just me moving my light source around now, is just, it creates different moods and it creates differences. Just see from the background all the way to the front. So just by playing around a little bit like this on set, and that's something I highly recommend doing, we can create those complexities. Other one is to say, where am I putting stuff in a room? Am I combining a top light with a side light? Am I combining a side light with a light from the bottom coming up? Am I adding a little kicker from the other side? Am I giving it in complexity, different hardnesses, soft and hard, different colors? So there's different stuff that you can always play with when it comes to that, and the way you can light faces. It's really interesting. I'm going to share this, I think, end of the year. I was going to the Van Gogh Museum and seeing how he learned light by painting portraits. Amazing museum to go to in Amsterdam to see how this master learned lighting by doing different kinds of complexities and testing it. And that's something that's best and easiest thing to do, just to try it in a rental house or at home, just to play around with different options. To go from there. How do you use CLS for lighting night scenes where you have smaller sources? Well, you know, that's always the question. What's a night scene? Are we talking about moonlight? And it comes to smaller sources, then you don't have enough ambient anyway, say it's a dark scene, so you don't need such small, strong sources to go with it. I always loved using streetlights and just using the reflectors to add them on there, which is a great way to do it. Yeah, that's the only thing I can say. I mean, the reflectors, they only have 3% light loss, so you can get a lot out of them, and you get a lot of control, and they have no spill light, so there's a lot of stuff that you can do with the reflectors just by the precision that they have from there. I hope this answers what you were asking for. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'd have to be a little bit more specific. Regret not having your reflectors in the 2 films I shot just now. Oh, that's such a, thank you so much for that. Next one. There's always, I hope the next movie is going to be better scripts than the ones before. And I'm sure they were wonderful. So there's always something, you can go from there. But sometimes I remember that too. You fight something and then afterwards you figure out something, I should have done it like that. But I'm always a tinkerer from that way. Greetings back to Norway. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that at some other point. So we're going to try to get people in. I have to test this first in peace. I'm a person who loves to test before I go out with stuff. Hope that's okay in sharing the video. Have you had any experience using Lightbridge strobes? Any advantages you see for photographers? That's a super interesting question. We have more and more photographers coming on now. And I think it's 2 things. One thing is, yes, it works totally fine with the strobes. We test a lot with the Pro Photo now. The LED is really strong on it, so you really see what the light is about to do from the direction, and then obviously, depending what accessories you have on it, it's going to look different just from what you're doing. But that's great to do. The quality, you have the same thing in a small studio. Light feels far away. It adds a complexity, and we have a lot of photographers that say, well, we have to shoot videos too. We're more and more blending continuous lighting with strobes, and that's where it's an easy way to use it too, because obviously that's where it comes from. But yes, we're going to be posting more and more content with that, just to show the differences. See, I actually have a question here. I don't know if somebody can answer that. Do you think it's a good idea to do a separate Instagram channel for photography and separate it from film, just so the people that only want to have film stuff don't get photography, and the photography don't get bored with the film stuff? That's something we're trying to figure out right now, how to do this in that way. Are you considering using tinted reflectors? Actually, it depends. When it comes to skin tones and things, maybe at some point we're going to do something. But for now, we take big pride that there is no shift in the color. So there's always 100% accuracy in the color that goes into the color that comes out. So if you gel a light source, it's going to be 100% that. So that really gives you the option of all creative freedom, because you're not suddenly fighting gear that's, you know, that's doing different stuff, and you have to counteract to that. So we take big pride in that. And we don't do effect reflectors. We don't do, you know, different colored reflectors. We don't do gold reflectors, because we're really focusing on high quality key lights. What we do is professional gears for people that need dependable gear that has the support system in the background for the rentals to really be able to always achieve what you need to achieve every day at a time. So this quality is really important for us. So there's no shifts. And if you rent here on this side of the world, another one, it's always going to be exactly that. So that's the reason we're not really doing tinted ones. And we had really good effects, you know, LED lights, you can change the colors, or you put gels on in that instance. No? I would like to speed about color of natural light in the sky, and adding sun comes same side when a product can aid with it. Amazing question. Some years ago, we had a big article in American Cinematographer, the Angie Jolie film, Brad Pitt film we did. And the thing was that Christian Berger, my DP, wanted the color of sky. So he really loved exactly that color. So we kind of the movie was paced in a way, the way the sun was moving, so we could take out the sun, or the sun was not there in those rooms that we were shooting in, so we always would have that blue. And then we started to add in the colors. And the great thing about adding sun colors is, for one, is obviously warmer and cooler depending on the time of day and obviously the angle, but it's also really great to think about, you know, like if your windows are facing the west side and you have the sun coming up in the morning and it's bouncing on the opposite house, for example, or in our case of that on the By the Sea movie, it was the opposite cove of a beach. It comes back this beautiful brownish light. So we were recreating that light to make that work. So yeah, and in studio works, you know, standard. Different lights to bounce into the whites, just to get the fill light from the top to recreate the sky. So really go cool, and then we always add the warm lights into that. I did that here too, but the iPad is not reacting to the colors the way I was hoping to really get the separation there. Yeah, so that's basically that. There's one thing, because you asked about the products and how they help in with that, is I had my biggest satisfaction using the reflectors, not doing an eyebrow, but actually really using the skylight, because since the light is traveling so far until it goes into the reflector, it falls so beautifully into place with the distance that you feel from the sky. So by combining the reflectors with that, it really looks great. Yeah, so that's where I had the biggest satisfaction. It's also the way the light falls off on the reflectors. It really, yeah, the diffusion 2 and 3 especially, they really blend beautifully with the skylight in that instance. So I hope that answers the question. I saw DOP Snapbridge, but couldn't find details about it. It works. Can you please explain? So I can't talk about it today. I'm sorry. We're releasing next week, but if you are at Camera Image right now, we're doing a first demo, a sneak peek of our new product launch that we're doing together with DOP Choice, and it's going to be called Snapbridge. So it's a real game-changing thing that we're super excited about, and it's launching next week. So stay tuned for the next Insta Live. It's going to come shortly to show it to you, and obviously it's going to be all over the place. How does the size of the reflector relate to standard softboxes? The reflectors I see in your examples online are usually quite small. Well, it depends, right? So the biggest ones we have off the shelf are close to 4x4, 1x1 meter. And yes, they don't have the size of a white or a muslin or, you know, any kind of butterfly rag you put up for a simple reason. If you want that big of a source, we have special customized solutions where you can click the 100 by 100s together and you create any size you want to. You can build yourself a grid. We've shown that now in Paris the last time. And but the thing is really the combination of it. Is that we always are used to putting big sources further away, not to feel too sourcey, but you can come closer with the reflectors because the light's traveling so far, the light doesn't feel so close, even if the reflector is, so that gives even more creative control, or for example, the light in the face. And I loved putting up big butterflies, bouncing into them, and then putting the reflectors inside to give you that punch, so there exactly we are again at layered lighting. Yeah, so that's the reason. And the smaller ones are for hiding, for small little stuff, so you can add multiple reflectors into one light source. Hiding reflectors is another one that we did it for. Yeah, so, and then it's just the size, you know, it's aluminum sheets, so you have like a 4x4, it's already a big thing to carry on. And if it would be bigger in one size, it just wouldn't be handy anymore. And, you know, we developed the Serial S on set for, it's 23 years now with DP Christian Berger starting before I joined him. So I've been on this now for 15 years of working on set to get it to the perfection where it's now. Would you like to know what kind of softening or changing the quality of the light? We have 5 reflectors in our kit, and it goes from diffusion 0 to diffusion 4. And that gives you the chance to say diffusion 0 is like a real mirror replacement, so it's lightweight, can't crash, easier to mount. And from there you go diffusion 1, diffusion 2, diffusion 3, diffusion 4. Diffusion 4 is super white, so that's very close to your white, so you get the whole range in precise ways between those extremes of a white and a mirror. And that's the reason we actually did this, because we were missing this. You have this in lenses, you have it in gels, but we didn't have it in reflectors to say, I want a little bit softer, I want a little bit harder. So one thing is to choose the level of the diffusion, and the other thing to do is just to swap to a different size. If you want more wraparound, just use a bigger one or put two next to each other, for example, because the quality is always, you know, the precision is there. So you just can put two next to each other and they'll be exactly the same. Not something that we get, you know, from expendables. I hope that answers the question. Will you make reflector that has a 2 times anamorphic bounce? I'm afraid I don't understand the question. Do you mean anamorphic in terms of squeeze, or do you mean it in terms of screen size? So you can put two next to each other. We do that. And if you want to have like a shape like this, you can put two of them together as well. We don't do the effect reflectors like they exist for fluorescent tubes. They have those aluminum reflectors in there, so the light wraps around, it comes down again, it creates kind of a shape, but we never went into that because consistency is so important. Depending on where the lights is and the angle is, that shape changes on you. So it's just not a fast thing. That's the reason we didn't do it. But otherwise, I'm afraid I'm not sure what you mean with the anamorphic bounce. If you wouldn't mind explaining. What do you mean? Light is lightly. You usually make light plots before shooting stuff. How do you prep, play a role in lighting and planning out how you're adding these elements of complexity before you get onto set? Great question. It depends on the location. It depends what we're actually trying to achieve. But I'm a real big planner. I really believe in that. So, you know, that means just when you get to set, you can throw it away because you know exactly what you're doing. So, yes, I do plot. And for me, it's just a sketch from the top, and then I put in where the light's going to go, and then I take photos on the phone, and then you kind of can figure out where it needs to go. And for the really big shows I did, we had a 3D planner on the crew ahead of time just for prepping, so we could really figure out exactly what's the room going to be, what's the size of the stuff we need outside, how much do we need to cover the sun. So from there, I do that. But I think it really helps sketching everything out. Just when, you know, you're thinking about you loading the truck, you sit down with the crew, you put out the plan, say, this is what we're going to do tomorrow. We're loading for this. This suddenly helps you if some mistakes happen, you know, in the lighting lists. Everybody's thinking. And I'm a big believer in leading by giving everybody the chance to think with you what you're trying to achieve. And I get everybody into the monitors too, because that gives everybody a chance not to say, I'm just a cable guy, but actually to say, hey, I'm doing this for this and this reason. And maybe, Jacob, do you really want to put the cable there? Because if I remember what you were showing us yesterday, you're going to have a shot in that direction. So that's going to be an issue. And I love that. I love that kind of collaboration. So everything I can visualize means I need to talk less, and I have more brains working, which is better than just mine. Please, can you see a video how to use exactly the reflectors? We have a lot of videos online. If you go to www.lightbridge.com, we have something called a show base, and we explain how the videos and the reflectors are used there. This is really just, you know, Instagram Live is like a chatting platform. So it's the wrong one to you. So it doesn't really, you know, I can't show a lot of lighting here. So we have that there, and then on Instagram as well, we show stuff. Please, can you show us what's the advantage of using CRLS? It always means what you're comparing it to, right? So if we're saying we're comparing it to traditional lighting, it means less fall off. It means spill light free lighting. You, for the first time, have diffused light that doesn't have spill light, so you don't have to use flags, frames, all that jazz to get it away. And only 3% light loss means you can make your light feel much further away without using a strong light source, and it's really fast and works in wind, underwater, all that stuff. Just make sure you clean them afterwards. It's an optical system. But other than that, please just watch the videos. I think it's the best way to see it, and just test it. At the end of the day, you know what worth is a video if it doesn't fit your vision. In the UK, if you'd please contact ProLight Direct. They're in London. Aussie is a great photographer as well. And you can get gear through ProLight Direct in London. And obviously it ships everywhere. Can you show us what you're using for your light set right now. I'm really proud of my light set today. Let's see how I can do this. So today I have a Duty Dolly from Matthews, and I have an aperture light, and I have my small little bar here, so I can hold on to this. And with this bar, I actually can move the light source at the same time as the reflector. And this way, I actually can move the light around and back on the same arm, boom, until I go to the back here. And now I can create my backlight. And I can come to the front at the same time too. Feels like rowing a boat. And it comes to the front, boom, there we go. And it's in the face. And you see how close the lamp and the reflector are to my face? And it doesn't feel like this. And the reason is because the light's traveling from the light source to the reflector onto my face. And that really makes all the difference. And by me being able to handle this here, that's the biggest advantage of the reflectors, or for me creatively, is just by panning it around. You have so many options because it's spill light free. So it's diffused light that only goes where it should be going. That's a big one. There we go. What's the best way to grip a 50 centimeter? We have C-wheels on the back, put it on, use an arm, put it on the stand, you're finished. If you want to have more pivoting options, there's knuckle heads, there's ball heads, there's different stuff out there that's going to help you do this. I mean, the look of the bounce, the look of the light. Yeah, I think it's best to test it really for what you're looking for, because the rule of thumb is to say the light that goes in is going to come out plus the level of diffusion. So if you use a sky panel, for example, like DP Manuel Billiger does, he uses a harder reflector into this, so he gets control of back over soft light. And if you have a light source far away from your reflector, it's better to use something more narrow, more a lens system, really spotted, so you get the most throw of the light and you don't lose too much light around the reflector. And yeah, and the same for strobes, of course, you can use it the same way. Yeah, that's basically what we do for the light sources. Any other thing else coming up? What software you use to make film light plots? I'm a theater lighting designer. We use Vectorworks, and I was curious what software filmmakers are using to plan, because film is so much different. Honestly, I'm not smart enough to do Vectorworks, so I do a lot of hand sketches and Photoshop, and there's a lot of apps like Miro or stuff that already has, or SketchUp is an easy 3D program you can use to put the stuff in there. But I really think the simpler it is, the better, because if you're shooting commercials, you have to do, every second day you need to do a lighting plot, and you've got like 3-4 hours to prep for the next show. So that's also something that comes into play there. Yeah. How do you approach not losing contrast and volume when front lighting a subject? When you're front lighting, it's obviously always going to be something that's closer, that's always in the face. So the thing about contrast is to say you want to do contrast to the background. You want to have a darker background, and that way it actually can look really awesome. And you can always also say, in this case, I don't want to stand up now, but I can tilt down the reflector and just flag a little bit off my bald head, and to get contrast a little bit more moving here. Or you can say soft and layered lighting, use a harder reflector to do a little bit of harder push here. So you're going to get contrast like this. And this also helps when doing that. I love front lighting, by the way. So I think that's something that's really interesting, that done a lot of time in photography, but in film, of course, it's again, if a subject moves, the front light changes very drastically. So it's something to look out for. But I think in contrast, like here, like with the dark background, it's great. Best indoor light setup, please share your using light setup name. The best lights for indoors, honestly, for me, are Lico lights. Joe Lico's, or ETC Source 4, they're called sometimes. It's basically a barrel system with lenses, and it's got blades. Aperture calls them spotlights. Mini spotlight or spotlight, and then you just can cut the light down to the size of the reflector, which is a big help in terms of spill light. And you have the throw, and it's spill light free, and you can put the light basically almost anywhere, just where it's outside of frame, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, those are all the questions that came up today. I hope you got a little bit out of this small little peek in what we're releasing Obviously, it's really hard to keep good stuff a secret, so it's great that's already starting to spread on its own. From there, I wish you all the best. Have great shooting days. Enjoy lighting, I hope. And looking forward to talk again soon. Thank you so much all for joining. It's amazing. Any questions come up, just pop us on Instagram. We're always happy to be there to help and to support. That's what my job was as a gaffer, and I see the same way as running a company. We don't just sell gear. It's here. What happens afterwards is here. How we can help people elevate the game with knowledge or with supporting of gears. What type of grip tools do you recommend for CLS reflectors? Have you ever been surprised by a rig? Oh, all the time. I learn all the time. It's the best part about this whole thing. If you go into the Matthews site, they have a special selection of what grip they recommend, but basically it's a lightweight reflector, right? It has to be precise, so you don't want to use some jinxy stuff, but all the ball heads mounted securely works great. And I love this little rig I built here. So I think it's all the little stuff that you come up with along the way, just to make your life easier. I think that's where it gets the most handy in that kind of way. Boom arms are absolutely a great thing as well for CLS, because they're so lightweight, you just can boom out into a room and make it work. So that also helps. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for this. Anything comes up, just let us know what we need to talk about. I'm really excited and looking forward to showing you all what we've been tinkering up to for the next product line. Until then, stay well, stay safe, and have a great shooting day. Bye-bye.